Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world yet again. Delighted to be here with Stan Bühne from IREB. Stan is going to talk about the Digital Design Professional New Certification, Craft with Digital Material. Stan and I have just had the most fantastic talk running up to the session in the studio room. So I'm really looking forward to this. I'm going to pass over to Stan to do a brief introduction and to go straight into his presentation. Thank you, Stan.
Perfect. Thank you, Debbie. So welcome from my side. Today I'm happy to be here to have my talk on our new certification program, the Digital Design Professional. And let's give a few words about not spending that much time about that. So currently I'm working for the IREB GmbH. I'm the Vice Managing Director in IREB. And before I joined IREB, especially pushing forward our new digital design professional, I was coming from consultancy, and I've worked in digital transformation projects, especially for the telecommunications domain, in different roles, requirements engineer, solution designer, and so on. But not spending that much on my profile. I think you are all more interested on what is new for the digital design professional. Giving you a short intro about IREB. IREB was initially founded as a non-profit organization in 2006 with the aim to professionalize requirements engineering. So that means most of you probably know the Certified Professional for Requirements Engineering, what was the, let's say, driver in the last years. But looking on the products of IREB, so for sure there's the CPRE, what is one of the, let's say, main products today with more than 50,000 certified professionals out there all over the world. In addition, we have this Requirements Engineering magazine, where you have the opportunity to have a free magazine where requirements engineering related topics are produced and published each month. But this is our new product, the Digital Design Professional, and that's why we are here today to talk about our new certification program. So looking to the agenda, today I would like to talk about, let's say, the meaning of digital design, to give a short motivation. Why do we need some kind of new certification? And then the next part is I would like to go a bit into detail of our certification programs in 2 points. One point is quite interesting and also, let's say, a kind of mind shift. We are talking about digital competences and digital material, and that's a thing I would like to go a bit more into detail. And in addition, to the building process, because building digital solutions is quite complex, and here we have to handle, let's say, different or we have to cover different topics. One is the, let's say, entire content for the solution that needs to be worked on, and on the other hand, we also have this, let's say, process of creating content, creating the solution, creating prototypes, and so on. And finally, for sure, I would like to give you some insights of our certification, how is this organized, when this will go live, and so on. So let's start with our first part, digital design. So when we are talking about digital solutions today, we have to really understand them holistically from one end to the other. And this really includes not only the, let's say, classical software part, but also the hardware. For instance, if you have this kind of smartwatches like I wear, and you have a part that's with hardware, you have these buttons, you have this glass that is touch sensitive, and so on. All these device elements. And for sure, we also talk about people that are using this, let's say, digital products. And we also need to consider, let's say, the social environment and also the business environment, because when we are building products, especially for a broad market, then there is also a business behind. This means also business wants to earn some money with this kind of solution. So it means there are many aspects that really need to be considered today when creating digital solutions. So what we like to do is to make some, let's say, analogy with the standard building process. So if we look on a statement from Gropius, he says building is a design of life processes. And if we, let's say, think in real buildings, this is quite clear, because if we see, for instance, the dam or the bridge, then it's not just a piece of, let's say, stone and other materials, but this is a solution, and this really impacts our lives, because it really has some, let's say, positive and negative aspects. It, let's say, has some pros. For instance, you have a shorter distance, because if you want to bridge this gap, you do not have to, let's say, go through the entire mountains and up again. So you just cross a bridge. So you need less time, you have less fuel. This means this is really, let's say, having impact on our life processes. This is the same with buildings and so on. And on the other hand, it's quite clear, if we have, let's say, these architects that are responsible for such building projects, for such construction projects, then we know that there's someone who is really responsible from the very beginning, from the planning part, who is really making the engineering, how this should be built, which material can be used, how to solve the problem coming from A to B on a shorter time, and maybe also to think about how to earn money with some kind of toll collection and so on for crossing this bridge. And also add to the entire construction and the maintenance of this building. And but when we look to, let's say, a digital solution, so you might ask the question, why is this relevant for a digital solution? But in my point of view, if we look today, for instance, on existing, let's say, solutions like booking our holidays or our experience with mobility, for instance, if you just rent an e-scooter with steer, or if you make car sharing, or if you take Uber, this is really also influences our lives, and this will also, let's say, somehow impact how we live. And that's why, let's say, creating digital solutions has to do something with, let's say, an impact on our lives and how this can be shaped. That's why we think that, let's say, shaping these digital solutions or digital products is really also a, let's say, design tasks that requires some additional competences, and these are somehow comparable to those of an architect. And that's also, you will find this in our syllabus, and also in our handbook, and also throughout my presentations, that we somehow have this relations of a, let's say, real building process for an architect and for our software project, because they are at least there are some nice relations in it. So when talking about digital solutions today, we already see that they merge with our environments. So this means, in the best case, if you are using a digital product, you do not even, let's say, perceive that you really use a digital or an IT system. If you look back for whatever 20 years, then you have these, let's say, old thick workstations on your desktop, and you have to put in all your numbers. So it was just used for processing data and let's say orders and so on. But today, if you, for instance, have a look in a logistics center, and if you look on how, let's say, also logistics uses to, let's say, track parcels to see, okay, when is my parcel arriving at my home? Okay, it's for that whatever 6 stations away. And this is really something that's making us, let's say, or giving us some additional opportunity to see how this, let's say, digital systems can be integrated in our daily life without, let's say, really seeing this as a kind of really IT system or PC with some hevel behind it. I think this is an important thing, that good digital solutions have to consider this technology aspects, business aspects, and the people aspects, like in this picture here, when, for instance, you're ordering something with a woman on the left-hand side, then you have an order that is processed. Then you have, for instance, in your stock, someone that is running around with a tablet and a scanner, just putting the parcel on his way, and then you can directly follow how this parcel is receiving your home. And I think this is really something that changes our business idea of solutions. And if you have a look on, let's say, projects in the past that are considering digitalization, here I would like to, let's say, first come back to, let's say, on these different terms, because often we use this part digitalization or digital transformation without really knowing what is behind that. And that's why we have just, let's say, distribute, or let's say split these terms up to be a bit more precise here. So when we are talking about digitization, these are, let's say, quite often transformations from real digital data, for instance, from an LP to a CD, or from a, let's say, paper-based newspaper to some other medium. This was really often done in the, let's say, in the past decade, that we say, okay, we have a bunch of data that somehow needs to be digitalized because I want to get rid of all these different folders in my cupboard. And this is something that has been done quite good. And this is also something where we have, let's say, a quite good understanding with our, let's say, existing roles, for instance, with requirements engineers, architects, software developers, and so on, because here it's quite clear what needs to be done, because you have a clear stakeholder, you ask them, and then they probably tell you what should be done next, what needs to be digitalized in which way, to get this process on track. A next kind of, let's say, digital solution is if we say we also have this part where the digital process are digitalized. And here we talk about digitalization. And this is, for instance, if you have a new way how these products, for instance, will be sold. If you use the CD, for instance, and the iPod, then from one day to the other, there was no more need for running into a shop to buy CDs, for instance. You just use your iPod and connect to your store and just download your music. For sure, I mean, the business process behind is pretty much the same, because you just buy a piece of music and you pay for it, and then it's owned by you. So it's just, here's the process. In between is just made in a digital process, and the, let's say, business idea or the business model behind is pretty much the same. For sure, someone else is earning the money, not the one in the shop anymore, but in general, the idea is quite the same. But if you now talk about digital transformation, for instance, moving from the iPod to Spotify, then also the entire business process is changed, because then from one day to the other, you do not own the music anymore. You just, let's say, rent your music, because you have a monthly fee. You just listen music like you listen radio. For sure, you have the ability to have your own playlists and so on. But it's a complete new business model. And this is something that really needs some additional competencies, because here it's not the way that you just say, hey, I'm just digitalizing what is existing in a physical world to a digital world. Here you really need to think about what are the processes behind, how is the, let's say, how are the people behaving, and so on. I think this is pretty much the point where our idea of digital design starts. So first of all, we need people who are somehow familiar with the existing technologies. This means who can really assess the capabilities of these technologies and the limitations of the technologies today that are already available. And for this, we really need some analytical skills, but this is not enough, because this kind of, let's say, thinking we have today in the silos, because thinking I'm just making the requirements, I'm just making the architecture, I'm just making whatever the deployment of a solution. This is not working anymore for, let's say, complex digital solutions. Here you really need someone who is able to cover the entire process, who is able to think in, let's say, in visions, but also who is able to at least know certain technologies. For sure, he's not a specialist in all these topics, but he needs to know these technologies, what can be, let's say, applied to create a certain benefit for a solution. And this is the idea of our digital design professional. And for us, these digital design professionals are the designers of the digital world. So if you look on the skill set of a digital design professional, he really needs to have some additional ways of thinking, because he needs to understand digital as a kind of shapeable material. It's, on the first hand, sounds a bit strange when we talk about, let's say, digital as a material. But if you just have this analogy in mind, where you say, okay, we have, for instance, an architect or a carpenter who uses wood, and he is, let's say, working on wood to build a solution. Then we have, for instance, our IT man in it, let's say, as a digital designer. He also needs to know and understand his material. He needs to know which technologies are available, which frameworks are available to build a solution, because with having this in mind, he will be, it's for him quite easy to say, okay, let's say, which different products can I use? For instance, which payment broker can I use? What are the methods for authentication of a customer, and so on, to create this digital solution. Then, for sure, he needs to think business, people, and technology in the same time. We need someone who is really leading the building process. This means from the very first beginning, from the vision or from the idea of the digital solution, by creating or let's say, improving the idea, creating the digital solution, and also until the, let's say, very end, when this product is going live, and also through the maintenance of this product. Because today, if we look in our, let's say, quite agile world, it's not that we say, okay, we have a project and we have a certain product that goes live and everything is fine, I don't care about it anymore. And in 10 years, we have another project, just, let's say, removing this product. It's more that we have an incremental evolution of such products. And that's why we think that we need people who are, let's say, covering the entire building process. And this includes also the life cycle part. And for sure, taking responsibility of the entire digital solution, because this is something where today many people just say, hey, this is not my business. I end with my requirements. My requirements are fine. I don't care if this thing is really working, if the vendor, for instance, is creating the right software, or if this deployment is working, and so on. And here it's quite important to, let's say, break down this way of thinking, and to also have someone who's taking responsibility for that. So when looking at our education schema, we more or less focus on the P model that was also somehow propagated by the German Bitkom, the digital organization in Germany. And here we have 3 competence areas in this P model. One is digital design competence. This means the design competence is really focusing on the integration of digital design into the entire building process, on this entire conceptual work that is for sure necessary, because you also need to document what needs to be done and so on. And here we also cover prototypes, because prototypes are really important today when we think about digital solutions, because with prototypes you have the ability to really or to have a validation of your ideas and of your solutions in a quite inexpensive way and really short in let's say in your development project. Another part is digital competences. What means is this is the idea of understanding digital as a kind of material. This means here we cover different technologies. Here we differentiate between perceivable technologies and underlying technologies. I will come later to this. What does it mean? And to technology-oriented knowledge areas. So this means here is the entire part of what is my material I can work with. And on the other hand, that's the top of the P. We have this cross-cutting competences because, as already mentioned a few times, we do not only need to think in, let's say, technology, but we have also people and business included in such projects. And this is really important to also think about business model, human factors when creating digital solutions. This means how people behave, how to, let's say, cover their fears, and how to create, let's say, a good building team, and so on. These are the aspects that are covered here. So now I would like to go into some more detail on the part of digital material and on the part of the digital competence, where we look on the building process. So if we look on digital material, as already mentioned, digital solutions do not only consist of software. So they consist of both, of a software part and also of a hardware part. And when designing a digital solution, the DDP has to evaluate and to decide if something should be either digital or physical. So based on, let's say, technological, business, and people aspects for this digital solution, he needs to, let's say, decide if, for instance, if this watch should cover soft buttons that are implemented in software, or if there also should be some physical buttons in this smartwatch or in this car entertainment unit. And this means here we have the differentiation, and here we also, let's say, describe what needs to be defined for our digital solution. So we have hardware elements and we have software elements. And I think this is quite important to cover both, because there's a clear interaction between these elements. So if you, for instance, use a cell phone having a touch display, then there is a functionality that should be covered by the hardware, and there's a functionality that needs to be covered by the software behind. And only both elements in combination will provide a good digital solution. So if you, for instance, look at Apple, so maybe not everyone is a fan of Apple, but at least if you see the, let's say, what was really the impact of inventing the iPhone. And here I think especially the usability of this material and of the hardware part and of the software part, that go hand in hand, and that the usability is quite easy, and that this product is really offering what the user needs. I think this is one of the, let's say, really benefits that was implemented by Apple, and for sure there are many others that are following this idea. And I think this is quite important to see that both things should work together for a solution, because at the end the user sees the entire or has to use the entire solution. He's not only focusing on the software part or on the hardware part. In general, he has to use the entire solution. So, and if this means if the cell phone would require that I have a backpack with all these batteries inside, then I would not use it. So like it was 30 years before. So the way that it is usable is means this is some kind of, this is handy, that this is, let's say, easy to use. And this is quite important in both aspects for our digital solutions. And when looking at these solutions, that's what I said in the beginning. So we differentiate between some perceivable aspects of technology and underlying technology, because the perceivable part, for instance, this is everything that can be seen, that can be touched, that can be experienced. For instance, if you use your phone, then you for sure you see the material of your phone. You see when you have a software, you see how the UI is created, what functions can be used. You see how a photo is taken, and so on. This is everything that's on the, let's say, perceivable layer. And in addition, there are some, let's say, aspects or some technologies that are required to really implement this perceivable layer. And that's we call underlying technologies. That's, for instance, if we look on this, let's say, real world example here, perceivable is the lamp, then the shape of this lamp, and what's, let's say, underlying is the creation of the power. For instance, there's somewhere some windcraft, for instance, that is created. Then you have this overland power transport. Then you have some cables in the ground coming back to this lamp you just see. This is everything that's needed to make this lamp shine. So this means this is all underlying technologies, and to have these perceivable technologies realized. Why do we differentiate this? It's just because to have some kind of focus, and because if you're talking to different people, if you're, for instance, talking with a customer, then he's quite interested in, let's say, the perceivable part. But if you're talking to the technical guys, then they are also interested in the underlying part and on the technologies that are used to realize a certain solution. In addition, also on a higher level, each, let's say, digital solution needs to consider three aspects. So this one is form, the other is function, and the last one is quality. So I have already talked to some people, and when talking about digital design, when talking about design, many people just have in mind to make something look pretty. But design is not only to make things looking pretty, it's also to have, let's say, something that's really working from a functional perspective and also from a quality perspective. That's also that needs to be considered in digital solutions. And that's why we want to differentiate in form, function, and quality. And if we, for instance, look at an example, and here we have, for instance, just take a photo. That's pretty sure that's a function. So if you use your cell phone, and if you just say, hey, taking a photo with my phone, that's pretty clear. That's a kind of function. Form is, for instance, the way how the photo app is represented, how these buttons are arranged, how can I zoom in, how can I zoom out, how can I just, let's say, touch to the screen to make this photo, and so on. Quality aspects are, for instance, the number of pictures that can be taken per second for sports movements, or how can I take pictures in nights. This means what is the how much light do I need, and so on. This is everything that's perceivable for the user. And then there are some underlying technologies. For instance, when taking a photo, there is a face recognition. And I mean, the face recognition itself, this might be quite interesting as a functional aspect for the user, but how, let's say, the artificial intelligence algorithm for this face recognition is really done. This is maybe not for interest for the user, but this is really interesting for the one who is really implementing the solution. And here we have this different focus on, let's say, talking with customer or talking with other ones who are really maintaining the solutions, implementing the solutions, and so on. And this model will at least help to cover somehow the complexity. So concluding this material idea, I think what's really important here is that the digital designer really needs some kind of knowledge that he is able to differentiate, okay, what should be hardware, what should be software. He needs to know which capabilities need to be provided in terms of what are form, function, and quality aspects of this digital solution. And he also needs to think about what are the limits of this material. This means also in, let's say, in a technological way, not each framework or not each payment provider, for instance, is able to be used in each and every environment. And I think these are questions that are quite important for designing a digital solution, because choosing, let's say, the wrong technology for a solution, this has a direct impact on the quality of the solution and also, let's say, on the usage of the solution. And this is something we really see also today in the last year, when looking back to the let's say pandemic situation, when people were forced really to move their business from a more analog business to a more digital business. And also here, sometimes due to, let's say, time pressure, due to missing knowledge, also here, let's say, pretty much technological decisions were taken that are maybe not that that were not that good. But at least I think there's a kind of mind shift that digitalization is quite important, even if the, let's say, projects were not done that well in any time or in any context. Good. Going further. Now I would give some brief insights into our building process for a digital solution. So the building process itself is created in, or we differentiate on 3 levels. We differentiate the solution level, system level, and the element level. Why do we do that? Also, let's say, to address certain people and also to handle this complexity. So on the solution level, we discuss with the customer what should be really achieved by this digital solution. So digital solution for us means this socio-technical systems. This means with the people involved, with the, let's say, technical aspects, and also with the software of this system. And this is something that needs to be understood first, for sure. And here are, let's say, different techniques that needs to be used for creating this awareness. In the second, more detailed content-related part, we are talking about the system. So the system is really something that is implementing this digital solution. So, for instance, kind of a piece of hardware, a piece of software, some let's say, all these technical, physical, and virtual parts that are needed to create a digital solution. And on the element level, we, for instance, have these, let's say, elements that are considered in the system. For instance, a smartwatch, then the cell phone, then the software part that is to be implemented on the cell phone or on the smartwatch. This means these are simple elements. The system itself is the interconnection of, for instance, the watch and the phone. And the software that's working together with all these interfaces on the element level, we go just one part deeper and say, okay, what needs to be part of, for instance, the booking app for a car sharing system, what is the hardware behind, and so on. In addition, we have these process-related aspects that also need to be considered. And here we also have 3 steps. So these are not really steps because these are, let's say, these pieces of work are also done in parallel, but for sure it's quite clear. Here we have scoping, conceptual work, development, operations. So before we go into operations, it's quite clear that first of all you need at least some kind of understanding, some vision on what needs to be created. And then we go to conceptual work, development, and operations. But what needs to be clear here at this part is that also that creating the solution and the system as a kind of concept, that is really done somehow together. This means there's pretty much work going on between scoping and conceptual work, because you have some additional learnings from the conceptual work when you think about, okay, how can this be realized with technology, and how can this be, let's say, brought into production, and so on. And this is something that can only be done in parallel, and each of these, let's say, parts will really benefit from each other. And also the part where you say, hey, it's quite important to have quite early prototypes, for instance, for testing an interface or testing your payment broker. And you can also use development aspects in a very first part of your project, to see how these things work out, to make some kind of evaluation and so on. This slide will just give you an overview of what we are talking about in, let's say, scoping, conceptual work, and development operations. For instance, in scoping and in the solution level, we talk about business models, we talk about customer segments that should use this product. We also talk about the value proposition. We for sure talk about the budget, because it depends if you just give 50 euros or 5 million euros that could be spent for your potential solution. Then this really has an impact on the, let's say, way you search for technology and you search for ideas, creating your system. Then on the conceptual work on system level, for instance, you talk about what are the existing systems, what are the scenarios that should be covered by the solution. Then you create personas to understand the solution a bit better, to understand who is really using this part of product or this part of solution, and so on. And on the element level, then we go a bit more into details. This is something you probably know from requirements engineering and so on, where we talk about, hey, here we really describe what needs to be done in a use case. Here we really describe the user interfaces, means what is the user interaction. We have to build screens. We have to say, okay, this needs to be shaped like a certain, let's say, ordering form. We need to implement system interfaces to define, okay, which kind of, let's say, attributes needs to be exchanged between certain systems, and so on. Bringing these both levels together, on the content level, we create a set of different concepts. here we start with a kind of digital design brief that is covering everything that I mentioned in this slide before. For instance, the vision, the budget, the goes, no goes, and also the business model canvas and so on. Then we have the solution concept, system design concept telling, okay, what needs to be done, software design concept and device design concept. That's on the element level, because here we have different concepts for what should be a part of, let's say, software element and what should be a part of device element, because they are at least slightly different. And on the other hand, we also consider, and I think this is not that often, that we also consider the process part. And here we think about which work items are created. For instance, which tasks are created at solution level, which user stories are created for the development, which epics are created. Then we talk about story maps to be able to map the different user stories to certain design concepts. And these are, let's say, all process artifacts we create. So this means to give all the people also an idea how this process could be done. This means we have on the one hand the content part that is giving you some templates for the entire concept, but also providing you more detailed concept for use cases, for entities, to model your data, for existing systems, and so on. This means, or for business model canvas, there are a lot of templates that are provided. And in addition, we have this process-related part where we have a real nice description of how a building process could be done and what are the artifacts that should be covered, and how they, let's say, how a system board, this is for instance a kind of backlog or Kanban board to see which user stories are currently in process, who's working on that, and giving back giving back a link to a story map and to see, okay, which scenarios are now implemented and so on. And I think this is a quite valuable tool to cover both process and also the content part. In addition to our syllabus, we also create a kind of case study that will be published in summer. And here we have all these templates for these different concepts and also for these building blocks that could be used. And in addition, we have a kind of, let's say, real story where we implement a running coach, a virtual running coach for a system. And here you would be able to, let's say, have a deep dive. All the content related thing is implemented or is documented in Confluence, and all the process related stuff is documented in Jira, that you could have also a nice deep dive into these elements. So finally, coming to our certification. The question is how to get certified here. So as already mentioned, we are concentrating on this P model. So on the right-hand side, we have our education scheme. This is structured in 6 education units. Starting from a kind of introduction, then coming really to the design competencies, then where the, let's say, entire process is described and all these templates are introduced. Then we have an education unit about digital material with all these technologies, things, perceivable technologies, underlying technologies, form, function, quality, which frameworks might be considered or can be should be known. In addition, we talk about cross competencies like human factors, business models. In EU5, we have the building process, and EU6 is just complementing this and saying, okay, what needs to be done for good digital design. Just a teaser here, if you want to have a look on the syllabus is already there, could be downloaded on our website, www.digitaldesign.org. So who is the, let's say, our audience? So in general, the digital design professional is available for everyone who is interested in creating good digital solutions. For sure, there are, let's say, all these existing roles already, let's say, somehow targeted with digital solutions, requirements engineers, UX experts, product owners, business analysts, and so on. These are for sure people that might be really interested to, let's say, increase their competences, because all of them already have, let's say, a deep understanding, for instance, in analytical aspects, if we talk about requirements engineer, on how to really detailed document certain aspects, but maybe they are missing aspects like business models, design aspects really, and technology aspects. And this is something as a digital design professional where they could, let's say, also come to these competencies. But as mentioned, in general, this is something that's relevant or interesting for everyone who's really somehow involved in creating digital solutions. DDP is also a three-day training course, and could be, on the one hand, done by some kind of self-education or having a training. So how can I get certified? As mentioned, on the one hand, you can, let's say, prepare by your own, by our syllabus, our handbook, and our public exam that will be available, or you make a preparation by our recognized training providers, and to find them, just have a look on our website. The certification itself, it's multiple choice exam with about 45 questions that should be answered in 75 minutes. For non-native speakers, it's plus 15 minutes they should get. And the validity of this certificate is similar to the CPRE. It's unlimited. This means you earn it once. It's not like the PMI or IIBA certificates that you need to renew. So it's unlimited for your lifetime. And certification bodies could be found as well on our website. For instance, ISKI, GASC, and so on. So if we look on our timeline, when is our go live? Currently, we are, let's say, coming to an end of our design process. So this is here the design squiggle, this something crowded thing, and this is really somehow showing how a process of design is let's say, somehow converging at the end, but at the very beginning it's somehow a bit crowded, and maybe you all know this from your own projects. But we are really coming to an end. And currently, as already mentioned, we have already published the syllabus. It's available on our website. It was published in March. Publication of the handbook will be next month. So currently it's just out of the language review and will just slightly be reworked. And the go live of our certification will be in June. So from then, you should be able to find training providers offering the certification program, and also certification bodies offering the exam for the digital design professional. So if you would like to contact me, just visit us on our website or drop me an email, or I will be at our booth at the A4Q conference for the next hour. Just have a look at the IREB booth, and I will be there till 2 o'clock. That's all from my side. I really would like to thank you. I think it was, let's say, a real bunch of information coming from our certification program, and I'm happy to answer your questions.
Stan, thank you so much for that really insightful presentation. And for me, I took away that certainly the digital design professional is multifaceted in skills and competence. And certainly the certification that you described for me would really help equip anybody who's interested in developing a career, starting a career in this area. It would be really useful. Another comment, you alluded to this, during these difficult times, while we've been going through the pandemic, I think digital transformation has both been accelerated, but as you mentioned, not without some of the risks. And moving forward, I'd hope that organisations will see value in such certification for preparing their people. Question-wise, how does this relate to requirements engineering? Or from IREB, they've developed this. Can you just tell me a little bit about the relationship between the two?
Sure. So in general, I mean, point one is that, let's say, two separate products. On the one hand, we have our certification program for CPRE, the Certified Professional for Requirements Engineering, and then we have the Digital Design Professional. But for sure, there are some, let's say, relations, as already mentioned in the beginning. So if we have a look on, let's say, kind of digitalization in the past, then we have requirements engineers that are really needed also today. If we have, let's say, a clear customer who you can talk to, if you have, let's say, stakeholders that are available, and if you create really products for a customer or for a market where you know who you are talking about. And I think the idea of requirements engineering is still valid, also in different contexts. Doesn't matter if this is waterfall or agile. And the relation to the digital, or what is different in the for the digital design professional, is that the digital design professional is not a role, so it's more a kind of profession. And a digital design professional would be happy to have, for instance, a requirements engineer, an architect, an user experience designer in his team, because he will not be able to, let's say, do the entire process of let's say, creating a digital solution by himself. So he is really needing these experts in, let's say, detail, but we also need people like an architect who's able to oversee the complete digital solution, who's able to, let's say, talk to business, and who's on the other hand able to, let's say, know certain technologies and also talk to the developers. And for sure, some people say this is something I do since years, and I'm a requirements engineer. Yes, I'm happy. And these are, let's say, people that are really, let's say, also thinking in the idea of digital design. It's not that we say, hey, we are completely new. There's nobody out there who is doing that. Otherwise, there would be no Uber. There would be no, let's say, online shopping. There would be no, let's say, all these new things that emerged in the digital market. But they are, let's say, they are not enough out there. And this could be clearly envisioned in the last year, in the, let's say, pandemic situation, where you see that all these small, medium-sized companies, especially, are really somehow struggling in this kind of digitalization. And I think here these people are needed and these competences are needed, and they somehow fit together.
Thank you, Stan. Another quick question for you here about self-study. So you mentioned that that was possible, as well as obviously looking for training by recognised providers. If you were to think about self-studying, what type of assets are there to support those people?
So here we would have, on the one hand, the syllabus that's already available. So the syllabus will give you, let's say, a broad overview of the entire content and also some, let's say, additional references. This is for sure somehow the entry point. On the other hand, for self-study, what's quite, let's say, helpful would be our handbook that will come in May. So this will cover about 240 pages, so it's quite, let's say, detailed. Also in the handbook, we, let's say, provide a lot of examples based on our case study. We provide a lot of, let's say, templates helping the interested people in getting the certification. So this means on the one hand, he would be able to, let's say, be prepared for the certification, but it would also help people, let's say, to say, hey, I'm just looking something for myself, for my work. So this would be for both of them. And in addition, there would be this public exam that would be available on our website. So this means there's some kind of, let's say, test exam that's pretty much related to the exam that will be official, but for sure would be different questions, but at least to give an, let's say, idea how this exam is created. And this will be available for preparation in May as well.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Stan, we're running out of time. I just want to say a huge thank you to you, and a reminder for everybody who is listening that Stan will actually be in the Congress Hall. We shared a link. The Congress Hall is really good fun. We use Gather Town, and I can't recommend it enough. And you can ask Stan any questions which you may not have been able to cover today. So again, just finally, thank you, Stan. And we're broadcasting all week from the E4Q Congress, and I hope people will enjoy. I know certainly this has been a fantastic session. My thanks again.
Thank you for being here. Thank you, Debbie. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.